Today, we are going to turn this into this with a little bit of magic from fire and smoke, and of course, some help from my friends. Oh yes, today we are talking pulled pork. Now, I often get asked, I want to start smoking, I want to get into smoking, what would you recommend that I smoke first? And a lot of people make the mistake of going out and buying a brisket, and trust me, brisket is one of the toughest pieces of meat, one of the toughest joints to get right. So, pulled pork is what I would always recommend. Go and get yourself a pork shoulder. Pork shoulder is very forgiving. It's got a lot of fat, a lot of intramuscular fat, connective tissues, and when that all breaks down, there's plenty there to keep it nice and moist and juicy. With a brisket, if you go out and buy maybe a supermarket brisket or a really lean brisket, a piece of brisket most of the time as well, it'd be a rolled piece of the flat, which is very lean. It has a tendency to dry out, and you're probably going to be disappointed, and it might take you a while to get the confidence to go out and use your barbecue as a smoker again. So we're going to use pulled pork, we're going to use a simple kettle barbecue. I'm going to show you how I prepare this, I'm going to show you how I set up the barbecue, so let's crack on. So if you've been looking into doing pulled pork and you've been put off by the fact that some people say a pork shoulder will take 15 plus hours, you're going to be up all night twiddling with your vents, trying to keep the temperature stable, fear not. We're going to do this in less than half the time using a method known as hot and fast. Now we're going to cook it at about 150 Celsius until it gets a nice colour on there, a nice bit of bark, and then we're going to wrap it in some foil, maybe put a little bit of cider in there until it's done, and you'll know when it's done when you use one of these Thermapens and you stab it in there and it probes in there like butter. So, but we'll talk about that later. Also, to guide me through this cook, I'm going to be using my Thermaworks smoke. Now, if you do have a barbecue and you want to get away from your traditional burgers, sausages, skewers or whatever, and you want to start smoking, I highly recommend you get yourself one of these. One of these probes will go in your barbecue. That will give you the temperature of your barbecue while you're cooking. So if you're cooking at 150 Celsius, this will keep an eye on that and it'll let you know if you need to go out and adjust your dials. The other probe goes into your meat. That keeps an eye on the internal temperature of your meat. Also comes with this wireless transmitter. So while this will be sat by the barbecue, this will be on you, wherever you are, in the kitchen, in the office, if you're working from home and you're doing this during the day like I am. It's morning now, it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to be putting this on and keeping an eye on it from my desk. Very, very handy. So we're going to use this to monitor the cook. We're going to use our Thermapen Pro at the end of the cook, just to make sure it's got the tenderness. This will also check the temperature in different spots, just in case your probe placement's not quite right in the middle, in the thickest part. So that's what we're going to use to help us with the cook. So first thing we're going to do, trim the fat, get this rub on, and then go over to the barbecue and show you how we set up there. So nice, really easy, simple trim job. You'll see that I have left some of the fat on there. We've just taken off some of the bigger stuff because we're cooking this quicker than we would do like an overnight low and slow, and that's not going to get as much of a chance to render down as it normally would. So we've just taken a lot of that off. You don't need it. I mean, there's so much fat within the pork shoulder itself. It's going to keep it nice and moist. So that's all the trimming we're going to do. So next up, we're going to put a nice sweet rub on there. Pork loves a bit of sweetness. If you're doing pulled pork, you're going to want a bit of sweetness in there. So get yourself a nice sweet pork rub. I'm using this Memphis Mud signature rub, designed for pork. It's got sugar, paprika, chili, garlic, brown sugar, black pepper, cumin, all flavours that pork absolutely loves. So we're just going to go ahead and we're just going to coat the whole pork butt. That's it, that's our pork shoulder rubbed up, ready for the barbecue. So let's go and show you how we set up over there. So we set up the barbecue with a load of unlit briquettes, and we've got a few lit ones that we're just going to dump on top of the unlit briquettes, and then we're going to bring this up to temperature nice and slowly. So we're just going to take that away. You see here we've got these unlit briquettes, and we're just going to pop these at one end Just sit those on there. We've got a pan in here that's going to act as our drip pan. We're going to put some water in there. This is just going to help keep a nice bit of moisture in that barbecue. If you're using a ceramic barbecue, you don't need to do this because they retain the moisture very well. But if you're using a kettle or fire, it's good to just stick a little pan of water in there. And like I said, that's going to act as a drip tray and it's a barrier for the charcoals not being underneath the pork. And of course, we're going to want some smoke. So we've got a couple of chunks of cherry wood here. We're just going to pop right near the start. The meat will take on the majority of the smoke at the start of the cook. So just bear that in mind. If you put it over here, we'll probably be wrapping by the time it gets over here. So just put it right near the start, like so. So now we need to use our vents to dial in the temperature. So we're just going to open the top vent all the way for now. Remember, we're going to be cooking at about 150 Celsius, so we want this to come up to 150. We want it nice and stable. And also we use the bottom vent to help regulate the temperature as well. This is for your airflow coming in. So for now, we're just going to open that all of the way. So we want this to come up to about 150 Celsius. Once it starts getting near there, we're going to close our bottom vent down, not all the way, probably leave it about halfway open, and we will start closing this one down until we can stabilise this temperature, and then we stick our pork butt in. You'll see that I put a temperature probe, pit probe, to give us our temperature at the grate, and then we're just going to take our other probe from the Thermapen Smoke and we're just going to pop that into the middle part of that pork shoulder. And that's it. We're going to pop this lid down now and we're just going to let that do its thing. We're going to keep the temperature at 150 Celsius. If we have to come down and just make small adjustments on the vents, then we will. But that's going to sit there away from the fire. This is going to burn around nicely. It's going to take on that smoke. One thing we do is just move the vent over to this side. This allows the fire to come up through the wood, through the smoke and outside, so the smoke gets pulled over the pork. So that's us now for around about 3 hours, and then we come down, have a look at the bark, see how we're getting on, and probably wrap it in some foil to finish. So it's been smoking away for 3 hours now. I've been at my desk, working away, just monitoring it on my little receiver. It's actually been cooking at about 160 Celsius, but that doesn't matter. Like I said, pork shoulder is very forgiving. So 160 Celsius it's been cooking at. I'm gonna show you what it looks like, and then we're gonna wrap it in some foil, maybe get a bit of liquid in there to help keep it nice and moist, nice and juicy. Then we're gonna pop it back in with the probe in still, until it hits around about 90, 93 Celsius, and then we're going to come down and start probing it for tenderness. So let's show you what it looks like now. Let's get it wrapped up, let's get it back in, and then I've got to go back to work. So here's how we're looking. You can see there we've got lovely colour forming on there, so we are definitely good enough to wrap. You can see charcoal wise we've used around about half, been in there 3 hours at about 160 Celsius, so we're doing all right on the fuel. The wood chunks have burnt, so the smoke is taking on all the smoke it's going to take on. So let's get this off, let's get it wrapped, get it back in. Okay, so the pork butt has been in for just under 5 hours. The alarm has sounded, it's 93 degrees internal temperature. So we're just gonna go and check that with the Thermapen, make sure it is, but also with the Thermapen, we're gonna probe it into the meat. We want no resistance whatsoever. Once we get that, we know we are done. So let's take you over there and have a look. We're gonna take our Thermapen probe and just put that in there. We can see we are at 92 degrees, so the probe is saying 93 from the smoke. So pretty bang on. We're at 95 there, 96. It's feeling nice and soft as well, so 93. So I believe we're done. We're just going to open this up. We're not going to bring it completely out of the foil. We're going to open it up just so I can get a proper probe test on there, just to make sure we're happy. And if we are, we're going to keep it wrapped in foil. We're going to wrap it in a couple of towels, put it in a cool box, and let it rest for a couple of hours. The longer you let it rest, the better it's going to be, because that meat's just going to keep hold of all those juices, rather than you just putting it straight away and the juices all just come flooding out, and you end up with dry, shredded pork. And here we are, the resting period is over. This has been resting for about 90 minutes, wrapped in foil, wrapped in towels, in a cool box, so it's still nice and hot. Now we're just going to unwrap it, pull it, and see exactly how we've done. So let's start by taking this foil off. So this smells absolutely amazing, and it's done in 5 hours. So if you are looking to get into smoking maybe, then like I said, this is effortless. 5 hours rather than spending 15 plus hours maybe trying to do a bit of brisket, trying to do a huge pork shoulder overnight. Hot and fast, pulled pork. Let's see how we've done. This bone should just slide out nice and clean. There we go. Remember, this has also been made easy by using my Thermapen Smoke. This has monitored the grill temperature and the meat temperature throughout the cook. I've done this while I was at work, wrapped it at lunchtime. And now it's just been sat, resting. I've just finished work, and I'm now going to pull this. So I've not had to keep coming down to check the barbecue, because I've had the Thermapen Smoke, checking the grill temperature, checking the meat temperature, and then we've tested it for tenderness using the Thermapen Pro at the end. This is the end result. Now, pulled pork, some people like to use the bear claws and really shred it into tiny little pieces. I don't. I like to just get it with my hands, have nice big pieces, that way it remains juicy and moist. So without further ado, let's get in there. So straight in with our hands, make sure it's not too hot first, and we just go in there like that, and that just pulls apart like that. That is exactly what we're after. Just pull off big chunks like that, and look at it, absolute winner. You want to mix some of this bark in with the rest of the pulled pork, but this, in 5 hours, I have to keep stressing that, 5 hours rather than the 15, 16 hour overnight cook. You can see how juicy this is, how easily it pulls apart. That's an absolute winner. So I'm not going to sit here and get messy in front of you putting all this apart, but I am going to have a little taste. So, oh, honestly, this is just falling apart. So we're going to take a bit. Let's take that bit with a nice bit of the bark. Well, that is what you look for in pulled pork. Nice sweet smokiness from the bark. Obviously that's been smoked with a couple of chunks of cherry wood. The pork is literally melting in the mouth. We've got a beautiful smoke ring on here, which is an added bonus. It's just beautiful. So that's my pulled pork in 5 hours. Please give it a try. Made possible with the Thermapen Smoke and the Thermapen Pro. Absolutely delicious, absolute winner. I've been the Smoking Elk. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.